Yo guys, what is going on? JPS back from the video, and today we're going to be learning how the German government works. I have absolutely zero clue on how the government in Germany is structured, how the country runs, literally nothing. So we're going to go into this complete open mind. Hit the like button, guys, hit subscribe, and let's learn.
This is Germany. It's a country in central Western Europe that's about the size of the US state of Montana, or slightly smaller than Japan. If you're still having any trouble finding it, it's right next to the town of Słubice, Poland. Germany's federal government meets in the capital and largest city of Berlin. So aside from tourists taking selfies at Checkpoint Charlie and a bunch of people ordering doner kebabs constantly, what exactly goes on here in Berlin? So yeah, this is Germany, also known as the Federal Republic of Germany, or Bundesrepublik Deutschland. Germany's government is best described as a federal parliamentary representative democratic republic. For those of you who aren't fluent in political scientistese, those terms just mean that Germany's government is a federation of different states under a non-monarchical government, which has different people as the head of state and head of government, I'll explain the difference with that later, and that there's a layer of politicians between the voters and the legislation. Germany is also divided into 16 states, whose German names, in alphabetical order of their English names, are Baden-Württemberg, Bayern, Berlin, Brandenburg, Bremen, Hamburg, Hessen, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, Niedersachsen, Nordrhein-Westfalen, Saarland, Sachsen, Sachsen-Anhalt, Schleswig-Holstein, and Thüringen.
16 states. Another thing I wanted to point out is this guy's probably American, just judging by the way he talks. Those are some pretty good German pronunciations for an American. Maybe? I think that those sound pretty good to me.
Some of these states might have familiar names from European history, be it from various treaties or dogs, as many of them are direct descendants of the kingdoms that once ruled these lands. Although nowadays the main purpose of the states is to manage local affairs that the federal government can't, and probably shouldn't, be bothered with. These include things like schools, law enforcement, healthcare, und so weiter. States are often further divided into Regierungsbezirke, or governmental districts, and Kreise, or districts, of various types, all responsible for various tasks even more local than what the state can provide for. Now, this is a video about how the German national government works, so if you're more interested in how local government works in Germany, I would highly recommend this video from Rubos. Okay, back to the federal government. Just how does that work? Well, first, there are two major legislative bodies, the Bundestag and the Bundesrat. The Bundestag meets in the famous Reichstag building and is the German parliament, while the Bundesrat meets in the Prussian House of Lords, or the Preußisches Herrenhaus, and represents the state governments.
Okay.
If you already know a bit about the US government, think of the Bundestag like the House of Representatives, and the Bundesrat as kind of a bit more like the Senate. The German government also essentially has two leaders. The president is the head of state, which means he, currently Frank-Walter Steinmeier, presides over representational matters and doesn't really have as much powers despite technically being the most important person in the German government.
So like every major leader in Western society, kind of. Well, I wish. I wish. Oh man, that's hilarious.
They really just preside over legislation and make sure nothing goes wrong. The second most is the president of the Bundestag, or Bundestagspräsident, currently Wolfgang Schäuble, who is basically in charge of managing the Bundestag and making sure everything's in order, and is basically Germany's equivalent of the speaker. The chancellor, however, or Bundeskanzlerin, currently the world-famous Angela Merkel, is the head of government, which means she appoints the federal cabinet and basically runs the country, in a sense.
Damn.
Technically, the chancellor is officially only ranked third in the German government, but if you don't know much about German politics, there's a reason you probably still heard of Angela Merkel. Okay, now for the elections, which are a little bit more complicated. Not really to vote in, but more if you're the person organizing the new government. Every 5 years, a federal election is run, and it is during this time that voters vote for new representatives in the Bundestag. Obviously, they also kind of technically vote for the Bundesrat, but we're just going to focus on the Bundestag for now because it's easier and more important. The ballot they are sent essentially comes in two parts. One for the person the voter wants representing their constituency, and another for which party the voter wants in power. You don't have to vote correspondingly either. If you're a fan of the SPD but like the FDP candidate more, you can vote both ways. This means that you're essentially electing two halves of the 598 seats, 299 of which go to local candidates, with the other 299 going to party representatives so that a political party can get a more proportional amount of seats for their votes. Although this does mean that the Bundestag may or may not go over the seat number of 598, and so additional overhang seats are often also given to balance this out. Overhang seats and their cousins leveling seats, however, are a no-so-complicated situation that's probably best left for another time. Just know that there are additional seats given depending on how the vote goes for a particular party. Now, you might have noticed that there are more than two main political parties in Germany.
Yeah.
In fact, there are currently 6 parties with seats in the Bundestag, which, in decreasing order of said seats, are the CDU-CSU, technically 2 parties in a kind of union, but still, the SPD, AfD, FDP, the Left, and the Greens.
Left and the Greens. I'm assuming that just means the left. This is a completely separate video that we definitely need to watch. An overview of the different political parties in Germany and what they stand for. You know, the Green. I think we have a Green Party too. It's like that's what everyone's going to vote for if there's another election like there was in 2020. I think everyone my age I've talked to said they're either not going to vote or close their eyes and vote or guess. Or some of them just said they're going to vote for like some random candidate on the ballot. That's how unmotivated young voters are in the United States, in my circle. Okay. Go somewhere else. People are very motivated.
These aren't exactly fringe parties either, especially since a party needs at least 5% of the popular vote to get a seat in government. This means that a singular party rarely gets a majority in government, and so they often need to pair up with another party to get legislation passed. This is something known as a coalition, and the current government coalition is made up of the CDU-CSU and the SPD, with the other 4 parties forming what is known as the opposition. So to wrap everything up, here's a diagram of how the German government. This is something known as a coalition, and party rarely of the popular vote.
Whoa. Just sorry, guys.
Aren't exactly fringe parties either, especially since a party needs at least 5% of the popular vote to get a seat in government. This means that a singular party rarely gets a majority in government, and so they often need to pair up with another party to get legislation passed. This is something known as a coalition, and the current government coalition is made up of the CDU-CSU and the SPD, with the other 4 parties forming what is known as the opposition. So to
Oh my god, I like that. It's kind of like a constant compromise, isn't it? Which I guess is what we have. We just kind of chop each other's heads off in the process. You guys form unions or coalitions. You know, okay, Germany, maybe you're a bit more civilized than us. That's okay. You know, at the end of the day, the political gridlock in the United States, our constant switching of the 2 parties, we kind of get the same thing where one party may take over and do this, and then their progress is wiped out. Y'all got the same thing going, and you got the opposition with all the other parties joining together, and that's interesting. I've never heard of a government being run that way. This is a completely new. The idea of coalitions is entirely new to me. That's okay.
Coalition, and the current government coalition is made up of the CDU-CSU and the SPD.
We're definitely reacting
with the
to
other 4 parties forming what is known as the opposition. So to wrap everything up, here's a diagram of how the German government interacts with itself. It's a little bit confusing at first, but so are most government diagrams today.
Yeah, that's true. State legislature. So the chancellor is like 3rd, but apparently has more power than anyone else. That's what I heard. Okay. Interesting. So many of the terms are so similar to what we have in U.S. government. Like the cabinet, the council, legislature, Congress. I mean, it's not actual Congress, but what he said, House of Reps and Senate. Those are the 2.
To the unfamiliar observer. So let's start with the normal German voter, who is a German citizen over the age of 18 who has lived at least 3 straight months in Germany in the last 25 years up to the election. This only applies if you've been living outside of Germany. So in this diagram, yellow boxes represent the legislative branch, blue boxes represent the executive branch, and gray boxes the judicial branch. Green arrows mean that one body elects and or appoints another, blue arrows that one body sends members to another, red arrows that one formally appoints and or has veto power over another, and 3 arrows is a German YouTube channel that's completely unrelated to this. So starting with a normal voter, they elect their state legislature and the federal diet. The state legislature, in turn, appoints the state constitutional court, the minister-president, and the appointed members of the federal convention. The minister-president appoints the state cabinet, and those two send members to the federal council, which works with the federal diet to appoint the federal constitutional court and enact legislation. The federal diet, meanwhile, also sends members to the federal convention, which elects the president. The president has veto power over the same legislation we just breezed over, but is also tasked with formally appointing the chancellor, who the federal diet also elects. And the president has veto power over the federal cabinet.
So what you're telling me is it's this huge domino effect where the voters are never directly electing the president or chancellor, and rather they're putting their faith into these people to go put these people into this cabinet and, appoint this person, and hopefully that person will appoint this person. Is that what it is? Or do you guys kind of just throw the vote out and be like, hey, hopefully they do good? Or are you voting for a party? Like, there's still things I'm kind of confused about. So if anyone, feel free to clarify in the comments on that. Is it what I'm thinking, though, this domino effect where you're kind of sending out the vote and hoping that eventually, I'm sure that leads to a lot of criticism of, well, there's always criticism in politics, but especially of appointments and what someone does, because there's not as much control based on this chart, maybe? I don't know.
That the chancellor then appoints. See, that actually wasn't too bad, was it? The German government is a big and powerful player on the world stage.
Oh, yeah.
Germany may be the size of Montana and have a population smaller than that of Vietnam, but Germany also has the 4th largest economy in the world, which in turn makes it arguably one of the leaders of the European Union as a whole. So it's kind of important that they get this whole thing right. Thank you as always for watching. If you weren't...
the German government seems like a very robust and solid system. I mean, I didn't see any problems or anything that was like, oh, why do they do that? It was more so, oh, they do that. Like, okay. So, yeah, that was a good video. I really liked that. Learned a lot about German government. Obviously, I'm not going to learn about German government in 7 minutes, but it was certainly a good introduction into the realm of German government and politics, which we will endeavor in the future. I really want to react to a video that talks about the different political parties, what they stand for, and I'm sure the comments will explode on that, but it happens anyways. But yeah, I'm very curious about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and again, if you want, I would really appreciate for some of you guys to clarify in the comments about just some pointers on what German government is like, or what you think about it, or like I said, the domino effect that I made up. Maybe that doesn't exist and I'm completely wrong. Who knows? Anyways, guys, with that being said, hit the like button, hit subscribe, and I will catch you all in the next video.